Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. It's another week went by, the Snap No Tap podcast. We have, again, guest hosting for Joe. Filling in is Brian Deneve, and there he is. And we got Nico. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Fine. What did you get arrested for, Nico?
Traffic
They're going to take your mugshot, it looks like.
Traffic violation. You know, the same drill.
Is that what they charged you with or what they arrested you for? I guess that's what we're at here.
Well, they were trying to arrest me for suspended license, but I got out of that one. It was over a little ticket. I was going 5 over the limit and didn't pay it, so they suspended me.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting because you can have warrants for traffic and never know it. They're not going to like send out.
Yeah, you don't know.
Sheriffs, yeah, they're not going to send out deputies for, what they consider minor, but yet, yeah, you get caught somewhere along the way for something else, and then all of a sudden, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I had to drive like a fugitive for the whole summer, but
Oh, really?
yeah, I still got to work.
Well, good.
So what happens there? You're just like 30 miles an hour speed limit. You're going like 29 probably that whole time.
Yeah, well, I actually changed vehicles just to be on the safe side and driving very, very cautiously. So, yeah, it was kind of nerve-wracking. Every day I'm like sweating it out, trying to get to work. That's my only option, is either that or go home and become homeless. Lose my job and everything over a stupid ticket.
Jeez.
I just read, was it yesterday or today, this morning, Chicago is now with these red light cameras in certain zones. They were giving out tickets in the past for if you did like 10 miles over the speed limit, then you get like a $35 ticket. Now it's like 6 miles over the limit. And 11 miles over, you get like $100 or $150 ticket. But they said since May till now, like June, July, 2 months basically, over 300,000 tickets they've written, and it's generated like $11.7 million.
Wow.
Red light camera, and I know what it's like when you go through parks, not like park district areas, school areas, things like that. They have these cameras, and it's easy to forget, especially if you're a suburbanite and you don't know and blah blah blah, or not a towner. Yeah, they nail you.
Oh, I just got nailed like 2 months ago, city of Berwyn, the same exact intersection. I got nailed 3 times because, okay, so you could turn on a red light, that's legal. But I guess according to their rules, if you don't stop and make a complete stop for 4 seconds, then you get $100 ticket.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I got nailed for 3 times in a row.
Well, I got a letter like 3 years ago from the city of Chicago out here because I had gotten red light tickets and they were illegal tickets. So they said, fill this out, you'll get your money back. I did. I never got my money back. Okay. So it's a total scam. But yeah, like out here, I won't do the right turn on red because I'm like you. I've waited sometimes 3 seconds and I still got a ticket. So the hell with it. Sometimes I get people beeping. Too bad.
Yeah.
Now I'm noticing other people, like just the other day, I was behind somebody at a red light, right turn on red. they didn't go, and I was cool with that because I wasn't going to go either.
That's
So
not worth it.
no, it's not. It's not worth it. It just really it isn't.
Those are not legal in Wisconsin. We actually don't have red light tickets, and it's come up as one way to deter crime. But when I worked at the state DOT, I worked in I was not one of the techies, but there are some inherent technological flaws to red light cameras to where I would say, yeah, if there's an opportunity to appeal them or something, it may be worth it because
It's criminal.
they're not perfect science. Let's just put it that way. The way they're triggered specifically on certain types of movements, my understanding, and it could possibly be where you did not commit the crime, so to speak, and yet you're penalized via this technology that isn't perfect. So like all technology is, anybody who owns a smartphone, anything is
well, they could tamper with the timing too, just to
Right.
get more tickets. Like this one in Berwyn, dude, I've seen it. It went from yellow to red within like 1 second. And I know that ain't right. And everybody's getting tickets on the same intersection.
They also have caused an increase in accidents because
Yeah.
when people would normally, you can go through a yellow legally, so you don't lock up your brakes, especially in bad weather. People are slamming on their brakes now, and they're getting rear-ended.
Yeah.
And forget about this. You're supposed to have a safe distance and blah, blah, blah. It all boils down to reaction. These are unnecessary accidents, and they were designed to never be a moneymaker. But as you know, there's been scandals and people have gone to jail over this because kickbacks and payouts and everything. So yeah, it's just another way to get more money out of us.
Yep, more money. That's what it is.
Yeah, a buddy of mine got a red light ticket driving my car, the right turn on red thing. So I had no idea. I wasn't in the car. He was actually following me with my cutlass when I had my cutlass. And yeah, whatever it was, 3 weeks later or something, I get the letter in the mail, $100 or whatever. I think it was $100. It wasn't Chicago. It was Waukegan, actually. That's where my car was garaged for the winter at that point in time. So he was helping me get it out of the garage, driving it home. But anyway, yeah, you're not going to win. There was a red light camera not far from where I live, 20 minutes away, and they built this gigantic grocery store called Woodman's, right? It's like the largest in the state. They have them in Wisconsin and here in Illinois now. And when they built Woodman's, they took that red light camera. It's gone.
Mhm.
That red light camera is no longer there. Go figure that. What does that tell you? Okay.
Well, Woodman might have influenced, that decision and been like, you're basically gonna hurt our business, which is true. There is a certain level of it's a barrier to some people,
Well, sure. And with the taxes that they're generating from Woodman's, they're not gonna, because I used to avoid that intersection because of that. Okay. And now, well, I go there to get gas because my car runs on damn premium, and the gas that they sell there for premium is pretty, comparatively cheaper. It's like 40 to 50 cents a gallon cheaper. So, but anyway, yeah, it's yeah, I'm sure that law enforcement or whatever you want to call it, the legal peoples will have their take to it. But I know that from what I remember when I was a kid, and how the old timers, we're talking like my grandparents' age, how they would complain about certain things the police would do that they didn't do, like when they were young. For example, there were no plainclothes vehicles. I guess back in the 20s and 30s, a police car, had to have those markings. You had to know that they were an emergency vehicle. And of course, we know now that for years that's not been the case.
Yeah, how do you differentiate? Like, can't somebody just fake it and pretend they're a cop?
They do.
No.
That's happened.
There has been instances, yeah, of just people putting on sirens, pulling over, and then, that's even come up. Have we discussed this on the podcast? I want to say that issues of if someone's being pulled over and you're not sure call the police station, call 911 and report it so that, I'm being pulled over, et cetera, because, what if that person is impersonating a police officer, which is illegal, but if they're looking to commit a crime against you, could be something severe. You want to take that chance,
Right. They used to advocate driving to a public place or local police department, but that doesn't work because you get some cops that are like, you were avoiding me, you were,
Yeah.
that kind of bullshit. Now you got to deal with that. So yeah, I think somewhere down the line there has to be some sort of reform. There just does. People have to protect themselves, especially now with the overwhelming amount of personal carry, either concealed or open carry or what have you. You got to protect yourself as a civilian, and that kind of ties in to the topic that I want to discuss today. And I'm going to read an email that I got. I trained as father and son. They're in my Tri-C program. I affectionately refer to them as the Canadians because they're up in Canada. Dustin and Billy, awesome people. And, on a side note, Billy's young. He's like 12 years old, small guy. His dad is massive, big, strong guy. And yet they work out, they train safely. They're progressing very well. So this is like for all of those people out there, even including you, Nico, with the training partner. He's got a training partner. The size discrepancy is tremendous, yet they excel. So anyway, I want to read you because I asked him, hey, you got any topics that you'd like to hear? So this is what they wrote. Regarding the podcast, maybe you can speak on the original purpose of your training with your coach back in Cleveland and how important it is to stay true to that original purpose and not change for current sporting trends or to make it more palatable for people. The original purpose of your training is what makes it so unique and valuable. Real techniques and training for real situations and, blah, blah, blah. So that's a very good question. And I do want to talk about that, and we're going to expand on that a little bit. As I've mentioned before to people, it was all self-defense for me. I really, really wish Joe Cardinal was here today because he went back with me to Cleveland and saw the war zone that I lived in. And it was all about learning to defend yourself. Defense, and nothing else. And there was no sport of this. It didn't exist. Pretty much all these types of submission grappling events, tournaments now are all man-made in the fact that within the last 20 some years or so or less, just people got together. It's their sport. It's not something that any of us were raised on. So good for them. Glad they did it. If that's what you're into, that's fine. It's not my sport, right? For me, it was all about learning to live. And the principles, the tactics, to this day are, as we discussed before, banned in these tournaments, including the UFC, MMA, for a reason, because they're very severe. They're at the highest level possible. That gave me comfort eventually when I came to that realization of what it is that I'm learning. In my day, there was no YouTube, there was no videos, there was nothing else to compare it to, except the bullshit fake pro wrestling stuff. You'd see the moves now and then, but you're looking at these locks, and even as a kid, I was kind of smart. I'm like, that's ridiculous, right? That just looks so, goofy. But yeah, I ended up just hitting the lottery ticket, really, in essence. I got very lucky, and I had no choice. It was either learn it that way, meaning severe, intense, or not learning it at all. And the training is hard. But if you want to become world class, all the training has to be hard, no matter what it is. World class at anything, it's intense training. I just watched the Olympics closing ceremonies, and right before that, they were talking about the rhythm rhythmic gymnastic girls that are practicing 10 to 12 hours a day. That's severe. Okay, that's a lot of training. And to get good and great and excel and be the best in the world or amongst the best, you got to go through it. So as I mentioned so many times, for me, it was my life was on the line. Not winning a gold medal, not winning, the championship belt. They didn't exist. It was survive, survive, survive. So I don't expect a lot of people to get that nowadays. All right. We're overwhelmed with sport. Let's face it, especially in any grappling area, MMA, jiu-jitsu tournaments, whatever, amateur wrestling, sambo, da da da. And I think people tend to lose grasp of there is a humongous difference in street fighting, street self-defense, and any of these sport elements. You can take your world's greatest sportsman, and he may do okay in the street fight, but he may fail too, because it's a whole bunch of it's different elements. Weapons, multiple assailants, terrible techniques, meaning destructive techniques, biting, eye gouging, ripping, blah, blah, blah. It takes a different mindset to be a killer. And, some people just can't do it. They can't bite off an ear or a nose or rip out an eyeball or beat somebody, club them to death if they have to save their own life. Some people can't do that. So there is a huge difference between the sport and self-defense, as you guys know. So for me, I've made concessions through the years of trying to train for sport people, and I've had great success, trained world champions and trained people who have done that won all sorts of tournaments. But I had to, water down what I did. And, it's kind of like, man, I just want to be able to do my thing and not have to worry about what I cannot do. So I don't know if that answered Dustin and Billy's question specifically, but, it wasn't like I searched out and said, I'd rather learn self-defense than sport. It was truly, that's all I had. That was the option, or there was no option. That was it, self-defense. And that's what I needed. That's what I wanted. I got lucky. Your thoughts?
I think the old adage of necessity is the mother of all invention. In the case it was for you, that was what was needed. So you cultivated that. But that being said, there are many people that choose that, so to speak, with self-defense. And I definitely think you're a prime resource if that's what they're interested in looking into. But that's important. I think how many times, and it's even I would even go kind of on a micro level, like how many guys that were like grew up in a traditional martial arts. What's that even mean? But maybe, a Taekwondo school, for example, and karate school, and maybe they got into a street fight. It could even been in a scholastic setting, like in school, to where it wasn't going to be completely ultra violent or, lead to their death. And then maybe it didn't work, so to speak. So they ended up modifying it or going on to some other training and learning, hey, maybe I should learn how to box or join the wrestling team because they tackled me and I couldn't do anything. So even within that, though, those parameters, that's still a relatively safe, for lack of a better term, framework. Then anything can go in a legitimate street altercation, where, you could end up just completely severely injured or dying.
Well, I think one of the benefits or the blessings in my case is that even when I don't do the killing techniques, it's still the super high level. So, and as you know, we train many champions in complete sport world. Some martial arts, let's call it, and I don't mean anyone in particular, you take away their killing techniques, all right, or the severe stuff, and then they don't have anything. Okay, so I'm blessed, and that's why I'm so fervent in what I teach, and what I do is so different than anybody else in this grappling world, because I cover both bases, sport and beyond sport. But you're right. The traditional martial arts, matter of fact, I was just with somebody a couple days ago, great guy from Indiana, as a matter of fact, and he's got a long background in traditional martial arts, Japanese, 27 years, I believe he said. And, he was talking about the history, and, there's some similarities to what they did and what I do as far as the joints and the principles of it, and the philosophy of the ferociousness. But as he clearly said, this all originated in his thing as a battlefield art, with swords and, knives and armor. And as I mentioned to him, wrestling predates all of that, right? Wrestling goes back, as they say, to antiquity. And no one knows the first people that decided, what happens if we turn a joint like this? Or what happens if we squeeze their neck? Who knows? That's lost to history. But somehow or another, either dependently or independently, these savage techniques trickled into other cultures. Spontaneous, or maybe not spontaneously, but independent creation. It can happen, right? It's like every country.
That's what I always thought, Tony, that like everybody develops wrestling kind of like independent of each other and kind of figured out the joint locks and stuff without, collaborating together, because, you travel on horseback at that time. There was no internet or anything. So I think the same thing as you. I think they independently figured these things out before even collaborating together in different cultures in different parts of the world.
That would be common sense. And then, of course, you'll have some cross-pollination,
Yeah.
Depending on warring, actual war, conquering, and, your troops demolished these guys, or those guys demolished you, and then, you try to pick up from there. But
I mean, let me interject something. Instinctually, I have a 4-year-old boy, and before he could even walk, he was wrestling his sister. Just like dive, and then my wife was like, because he has an older sister, and she's like, it's built in. I mean, that's literally the words that my wife used, was it's built in. And so it's absolutely instinctual. And then, yeah, I guess the question is, how much did it evolve in some of the intricate techniques, but I want to throw that in.
Yeah, well, striking, grappling, all of this is probably, instinct in us, part of our survival instinct, just like, sexual attraction is instinctual, not just in us, but in the animal kingdom, because procreation, we want to keep the world going. So there's certain things that are, like your wife said, built in, baked in. But you still have to cultivate it. And that kind of brings me to the next subject. And you guys don't exactly, all this ties in. Now, but let me preface this by saying, I don't know this guy. Never met him. I have absolutely no inside information about him whatsoever. I remember seeing him wrestle when I was a kid, younger. But I don't know anything. And that is, we're going to talk about Haku, Meng, King Tonga, right? Who's pretty much universally regarded as the toughest pro wrestler since the 1980s. They don't seem to talk about, the old timers from the 20s, 30s, and 40s. But Haku's got, the reputation of kind of like what we do, going down and biting, gouging, whatever it takes. He's not, as far as I know, a submission guy. But I don't know, because of the professional wrestling world and the kayfabe and the hyperbole, you don't know what's true, what's not true. So for the sake of this discussion, I like to stick with the facts that, let's just say, everything is true about him. Okay. There's a lot of pro wrestlers that, say that this guy was the best of the best in the wrestling world, and he would crush Brock Lesnar in a street fight, this guy, that guy, whatever. So you have a group of folks who are MMA supporters who believe that, well, you're not going to beat a trained fighter in a street fight and this and that. Well, a trained fighter has every chance to win. But once again, it's that mindset. Let's face it, guys like Haku are trained, right? It's not like they've never exercised and never did anything. Apparently he had some judo, or not, I didn't mean to say judo, sambo, forget it, sumo background and some other martial arts. And plus just the combat stuff of the wrestling, how to move and how to work with a guy's body. So he's not a fish, and he was big and strong and all of that. And so while he wasn't in the sports world like we are, with the tournaments and all of that, I guess he just has one of that mindset. And regardless of if it's true or not, let's just, again, base it that it's true. So I can relate to that because growing up, I saw death. I saw a lot of bad things. I don't want to get into it on a thing, but it's just a lot of horrendous stuff, things that you just could not imagine. And subsequently, I read about things that you just cannot imagine. For example, like Jeffrey Dahmer, who ate people, killed them and cooked them, right? You're like, who does that? Somebody who's twisted in their head. So if you have a guy that's willing in a street fight to rip your nose or rip your ear off, bite your nose, poke your eyes, or whatever it is, can you deal with that? Now, the problem with sport, I don't care what sport it is when you're constantly relying on those sportive techniques that put your organs, your vital organs, the groin, everything, in contact with someone, you're not even thinking about that. You're totally unprepared for that. And you can become actually quite vulnerable, all right? To the point where once the attack on you, on these vital organs start, it may be too late to stop. Now, this does not mean, and when I made my ripping video, 20 years ago, learning to do these things alone is not enough. Okay, you'll probably get overpowered. But when you know how to wrestle like we do, you know how to strike like we do, and you add these things in, you become very formidable. And unless your attacker sucker punches you or just somehow is just a wrecking machine, they're not used to this. They're going to find themselves in trouble. And it's been proven and shown in my world over and over and over. So if everything is true about Haku, yeah, he would have been a force in a street fight, not just because of his physicality, but because mentally he was willing to go the extra mile, meaning, maiming you, and he had the ability to do it. So I say, and I've seen guys who you would probably think are Marvin Milquetoast, mop the floor with people, and not always just with their hands and elbows and stuff, but they'll pull a gun out and blast your ass, and you're done. Okay. So this is the problem when you're just a sportsman. Yes, you have a great advantage, and you need to learn these techniques, but in and of itself, it's not enough. I believe it was Trevor Berbick. It was one former heavyweight champ that got beaten to death, with I believe clubs or pipes. I didn't think about this. I should have looked it up. And now people will say, well, he was just a boxer. Well, come on. That boxing is amazing. It's fantastic, but it's still a sport. MMA, amazing, fantastic, still a sport. And if you don't train psychologically, physically, and spiritually for multiple assailants, weapons, crazy ground stuff like you're on rocks or you're on ice or you're on this or that, man, you're going to find yourself having a panic attack because you're in a whole new world. So that's kind of like what I wanted to say about this. Again, I'm not saying if what they say is true or not. I have no idea. But I do know from talking to my coach, Rod Vaughn, not about Meng, because he wasn't even a thought in our minds at that point. Rob Allen was tough. He was the toughest man I've ever seen. And there was others, that, predated him, I'm sure. So there is a difference, people, between sport and self-defense. So I would seriously say, take your sporting aspects and elements, and then you have to enhance them. Your thoughts? Nico.
So what are the best ways to kind of implement that stuff into your training for a sportsman?
Well, a sportsman is going to have to just stop with the sports for a while, unless you have a unlimited schedule, and you have to have a proper coach. This is all I've ever done was I did all of the rough stuff, and I took it out. So now you've got to find somebody who knows the rough stuff and is able to put it in if you can't train with me, because you're going to lose. I mean, I'm telling you right now, you're going to lose. You don't know what it's like to go up against a person who wants to kill you. They have no moral, there's nothing to hold them back. Okay. They'll do whatever it takes to kill you. And we know this, it's common sense. People die every day. They're murdered every day. So there are folks out there, and many of them are not very well trained. They'll just, they just they don't know when to stop. So not every sportsman can do this. I don't want to mention names, but I've known of some very, very, very high level champion athletes who just were not street fighters. They're like, that's just not my bag. I'm a sportsman, and that's it. Guys, I just heard something upstairs. I'll be right back. I'm like, my mom's all right.
Yeah, take your time. Yeah, I think on that note, Nico, I mean, one thing that I always, just a point of conversation, is that it's not even necessarily the techniques you're learning, it's just the mentality behind it.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I came from, I did Taekwondo when I was a young boy, and in the 80s, and then even in the 90s, and my instructor was, he was a native Korean, and he had trained Korean military during the Vietnam era. And so, and I asked him one time, what do you teach us anything you teach them? And he's like, no, he kind of said, not so much, or, and he's talking about knife techniques and things like that. And I think about that, obviously, well, why not? And I'm not saying it needs to be, his entire curriculum's got to be based upon how he'd be fighting the Viet Cong or any of his troops, but the risks are still there. You're dealing with a possible interaction that could end your own life. I mean, why aren't we, learning some of these things in the dojang? So, Tony, everything all good on your end?
Yeah, she's fine. I don't know what that pounding was, but
okay. Hey, anytime you got it.
Well, thanks. Yeah, because she's directly above me. I'm in the basement underneath the living room where she's at. But yeah, no, just like military or hunters, you get guys that'll have no problem shooting a deer, whatever. But can they do that to another human? Some can. I'm not saying they can't. Some can. Some can't. Same with military. There is a big difference between sniping somebody or shooting them at a distance or whatever, or blowing them up and this and that, than doing it with your bare hands. And again, I'm not saying none of them can do it. That's not my point, but not everybody can. And that's why in my opinion, I mean, you have to have a blend of the two. You got to know your, let's call it sport techniques, or at least your science of it. But the problem again with the sport is it does put you in vulnerable positions. Okay, very vulnerable. All you have to do is watch any, let's say, grappling match, and you'll see, oh my goodness, he could get this and this and this and this could happen to him. So that kind of like negates that whole chain of techniques that perhaps you may have been going after. So it's no longer just a question of, let's say, guard your eyes. It's like, don't even go down that path. Don't even engage your opponent with that strategy, because you're completely vulnerable. Just like in the old days with the boxing versus wrestler. Well, you take a wrestler, or you take a boxer down, and his, and all of his boxing techniques are gone. Well, same here. You engage with a savvy ripper, ripper grappler here. He can negate your grappling techniques because he's got, adequate grappling maybe, and these techniques that you're just unfamiliar with and have never trained. So it's so in essence, what I'm getting at, everybody, is it's not just a simple question of, okay, for this next week, we're going to practice, adding in ripping. It doesn't work that way. You got to start that from the get-go. And it takes a long time to incorporate it to become a master, just like anything else. You're not going to learn to master the double leg in one day. You're not going to learn these pressure points or severe techniques in one day.
Is there a way to quantify it at all? I mean, going back to Nico's question, if someone is a sportsman, so maybe they have the aptitude, the athleticism and a certain amount of damaging techniques, for them to switch to the street mentality and maybe absorb that as a skill. I mean, what do you think?
Street techniques, mentality is a deeper subject. Again, you can show them all these techniques and they can do them just, within reason in the gym. Can you do it on the street? Now that's a whole different story. That's where the mentality comes into play. And that's kind of what I was trying to allude to with the character, or the man. He has, if all is true, he has that mentality where he will do this to you. Okay. Whereas others can only just talk about it, maybe demonstrate it, but would never really use it. Right. Yeah, you can train it, but again, you have to find someone who really knows. And I don't know how much so like when I teach the ripping aspect of it, let's say I teach you a chain of moves. Well, once you start incorporating ripping, that particular chain may no longer be valuable to you because it'll put you in harm's way. If your training partner or your opponent on the street knows how to rip, like as we call it, you're going into the den of iniquity. He sprung that trap. So it really alters your whole game. You get my drift? So you almost have to start again
Sure.
at square one. So a sportsman would have to have two things mentally. He would have to have, or she would have to have, that mental ability to kill if necessary, and the mental ability to realize, man, I've got to totally alter the way I've been training and the way that I apply my current techniques. I have to humble myself and almost start from square one. Not really square one, but you're going to have to alter your strategies and your approach to fighting. And believe me, we know, I can't speak for Nico, but I can speak for you, Brian. We know already that many people cannot do that, because we've had guys come through the gym and get, snuffed, basically tied up, tapped out, whatever. And because they were so vested in their current or previous training, however you want to look at it, they couldn't abandon that training and say, oh, wow, okay, I'm going to drop all of that and strictly train with you guys. What do? They just leave with their tail between their legs, and that's it. So there are plenty of people out there that would not have this kind of mentality to deal with the ripping. I know this because one of the biggest, not complaints, but the biggest emails and things that I receive about this is that no one at these quote unquote schools wants to practice that stuff. So they're like, Tony, what can we do? Well, you got to find training partners that are like-minded like you. So if you can't practice this stuff in the safety of a gym, well, now those are the types of people that don't have the mentality for level 2, which is the killing mentality.
So what kind of things did Rodvon do with you to develop that type of mentality?
I don't think, well, I had that mentality because I was already the victim of so many bad things to me, to my grandmother, to my neighbor, to friends. So I was like this all the time, shaking and nervous and scared. So I did not want to, I had that burning desire already to learn to defend myself. So I didn't come from a Pollyanna existence where a lot of people do. Like, again, I've been coaching for so many years. A lot of people are like, well, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, hey, I live in a nice neighborhood. That kind of stuff doesn't happen here. Well, those are harder nuts to crack because they don't see the importance of really learning to defend themselves. Now, maybe things will change in their life or change in society in general. But I already had that going in. And what he did with me was he just kept on emphasizing that it can get worse for you. And I really hope I see you again. Meaning, not that I would quit, but that I would get killed along the way and not be able to train any longer. I mean, there was no need to convince me that I needed to defend myself. I knew that full well. So I had a big step ahead of everyone else. Generally speaking, I'm sure there was other people who were going through what I went through and that, but I mean, did they reach out for martial arts training? I don't know.
It reminds me of listening to interviews of Tyron Woodley, who was a very successful MMA guy, but he grew up in Ferguson, Missouri, and very big issues inner city, and gang involvement, or at least being tied into some of that activity. And he's like, yeah, I started wrestling, and wrestling was never, from a mental standpoint, was never as hard as what the fear was never there. He was like, it was easy compared to what I had to deal with in the streets. I didn't have that same. So I guess once you've been at this level, taking it to here, and kind of like you talk about with Rodvan being at this, the training was always so brutal, intense, that nothing else would make me, it prepared you, let's just say, adequate, because everything was beyond that.
I've said this for years and years. He used to tell me the worst beatings, the worst situations you're ever going to experience are going to be here with me. That was his. So it was going to be the additive. It was going to be the inverse of what you just mentioned with the MMA fighter. Whereas Rodvan wanted my training to be so horrific that the street would be like a welcome almost. It would have been. And I told this gentleman a couple days ago, the 27-year karate man, I would get like panic attacks and get nauseous and all of that, just the nerves just worked up. But he did things to me in training, and I showed the guy a couple things that I went through. If I trained anybody like that now, the way I learned, I would be arrested. There would be no I couldn't talk my way out of it. Okay, I would go to jail for learning the way that I've learned. And I've shared this with you guys before. And, it was supplanting the submission with some other sort of physical punishment and pain to trigger the importance of do not ever allow yourself to get dominated. And for 20 some years or 30 years, whatever, I've been saying that's the problem with submission grappling. The grappling itself is fine, but it's the fun environment of it, right? The safe environment of it. You get in trouble, you tap out, you quit. And there's no shame in that. Well, you cannot, and that's the way it should be, by the way, in a sport world. But you cannot have that mentality in the street. You cannot. You just cannot sit there and think, hey, this is no big deal, because psychologically and physiologically, you're going to react in such a way of not recognizing the ultimate threat here. So now imagine every time in training, and this goes not just for you two guys, but anybody in the listening audience. Imagine every time in training or sparring that you got tapped out. Figure it out in your mind how many times that happened. And now think that each and every time that happened, it was a gunshot or a baseball bat to the head instead. You probably would have been dead a long time ago. that's the kind of thought process you have to have. You dodge literally a bullet, so to speak, in your gym when you got tapped out, and next thing you know, you're shaking hands and laughing it off. You won't be able to do that in the street, man. You may not get up from there. It may be all over. This karate man brought up Conor McGregor in his leg injury, and I said, yeah, imagine if that was in the street against, a violent person. Conor would be dead right now because he was helpless with his leg injury, and that was it. He'd have been at the mercy of the adversary. So these are things you talk about. How do you train and how do you switch from a sportsman to a reality-based guy? These are the thoughts that have to go through your head. They just have to. When I filmed the Snap No Tap, I was all beat up, broken hip, arm all blown out, everything else. So what? I would still have to fight no matter what. Nobody's going to sit there and give me a break. A bad guy's not going to sit there and say, oh, okay, well, I mean, too many elderly, too many crippled people, too many people are getting assaulted, raped, killed, and nobody, their opponents or their enemies, whatever you want to call them, don't give two shits.
So let me ask you something. So a lot of what goes on in the gym is, like a grappling gym is the idea of developing your technique in this safe environment. Sometimes, having an open environment and fostering, not having competitive roles, so to speak, like you're ROLL, like you're going balls out every time because you really want to experiment and try and cultivate your skill in that kind of setting. So given that's necessary, so to speak, I mean, how do you reconcile that with not wanting to tap out? Do you understand my question? You want to be able to. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, it's about replacement. All right. You can't have death matches every time in your gym. We know this, right? We didn't do that either. You do have to go with your traditional tapping out, as they call it, just so you can develop some of that technique and, counters and all of that. But the big thing is also when you got guys that want to fight it all the time, and really fight you and not cooperate so you can both get in a learning environment, somebody's going to get hurt. All right. And then they're going to get injured, and they're going to either blame you or sue you, or blame the instructor or sue the instructor, or they're going to quit, or they're going to come back even more ferocious, right? And that's not the kind of mindset you have to have. So as I mentioned to you guys many times before, when I would get submitted, when I was learning, when we would go live or something, he would do something to me, wrist lock, whatever, it didn't matter. Wasn't allowed to tap out. I never heard of that concept. He would crank it, not injure me at that point. He only did that once, years later, but he would crank it. So I'm uncomfortable and I'm yelling for help. And then he would let go of the hold when he felt like doing it. And then I had to stand with, like a scarecrow, arms extended and so on. And eyes closed, and he'd come up behind me, and I would get attacked. I would get beaten, hit, struck, whatever you want to call it. Pain. So we transferred the lack of injury from the submission hold to physical pain somewhere in my body. And that included the groin here, by the way, guys. Not always. He always mixed it up, so I would never know what to expect. But it cultivated that fear, that adrenaline. And I knew the next time I got on the mat, if the same thing happened, that I would get hooked on, or not hooked, but, submitted, in a way. I'm going to feel this horrible pain or this psychological trauma. And I am not saying, this is why I said I couldn't teach you guys like this. I'd go to jail. And I'm not saying it's harmless. It probably helped with my, PTSD and all of that, developing it here, this nervousness and shit, this hyper alertness. But that was his way of making me realize this is not fun. This is not a game. Okay. This is life and death here. So I have to leave it up to each individual instructor to reach their students that are interested in real life self-defense psychologically and figure a way based on their personality to trigger this momentum, not momentum, this adrenaline, this importance. And part of it stems from education. I've mentioned before that talk to the local, if you live in a big town, talk to the police. See if you can set up a trip to the coroner's office and see dead bodies, if they'll allow you, bodies that were victims of violent crime. Look at videos, go through medical books, go to your library if they don't have it on the internet, and look what happens when you get slashed or shot or what have you. Get it into your head that that could be you. You could be on that slab in the morgue. You know, something has to trigger you. Firemen, medics, nurses, doctors, they deal with like trauma like this, you know, so maybe in the beginning they got sick or whatever, but you almost tend to become callous. But you've got to make the connection here that this could be you. You know, that gunshot victim that the paramedic went to, you know, revive, that could be them. That could be the medic. You know, that just, these are just my thoughts on it. I mean, by no means am I saying that there's other solutions to it. There are, but nothing beats physically, personally experiencing this stuff. And many of us, like the MMA guy that you were talking about, Brian, he lived through it, like I lived through it, and others have lived through it. So you don't have to convince him on how deadly this shit is out in the street.
There's a, it kind of reminds me of, this is, I'm not going to say the man's name, but a guy who used to train Tony with us, and not really like more tool and die group, but you know, was around, and he was very much into the street mentality, and you and him shared that perspective. But I do remember him talking about the role of being physically fit, or you know, because this guy definitely had the mentality, but there was an altercation that happened, and with the level of adrenaline that it triggered, and all of the different, you know, what, you know, heart rate, all the elevated issues. I mean, it really took its toll on him physically, just because his body was so out of shape that his body wasn't used to kind of being in that fight or flight reaction that one would get through definitely training properly in a gym environment, but at the very least, you know, having a certain level of physical exercise.
I believe did his first name begin with the letter M?
He was a business owner. I'm not trying to remember his name.
We'll talk afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, because this guy was a business owner as well. Yeah, I've always said that I use the 10% number, meaning if you could go 10 minutes full blast, let's say 10 minutes hard wrestling or fighting, you know, sparring, I should say, in the gym, you can probably go for about 1 minute in the street because of this factor that you just said. The adrenaline, the hyperventilating, you know, it's just unbelievable, the difference. It really is. Now, there's no scientific basis for that number, but it's just my own personal spin on that. So, yeah, you have to learn to control your emotions, because all this hyperventilating, all this adrenaline, that all stems from up here in your brain, in your mind. And it's a reflection of your training. So when you're training without that adrenaline rush or that fear factor, I guess you'd say, you may not be prepared for it in the street unless you have that kind of switch. And I really wish no one had a fight ever in the street. I really don't want that for people. But you know, there's just, you know, if you want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. There's just really no way around it. And the what's the word I'm looking for? With the proliferation of sport now, like MMA, let's just say, or the grappling, the reality-based scenarios are gone. People aren't thinking in that mode. Granted, these techniques in MMA and grappling are great. So the problem, you know, there's a lot of great techniques. Some aren't totally useful, but there's a lot that is. But years ago, like when I was a kid, the mentality was there. The street mentality was there. Maybe the techniques weren't, right? So it's almost kind of like it's flipped, you know. So now you got a lot of these great techniques, but you don't have the street mentality. Back in the 60s and 70s, you had the street mentality, but may not have had all these techniques. So I think it just starts with I don't know the answer, but I would think it would start with just getting people who are truly serious about reality-based martial arts and don't look at it as a style. Like I want to study, let's say they would say Krav Maga or, you know, JKD or whatever it is. Don't look at it like that, because that's still that may not be all encompassing. It's a psychological thing. It actually has to start with a mindset before it starts with a stylish style set. It's got to be a mindset first. You got to have that killer instinct, or you have to try to develop it. And if you can't, and you know that, then you have to work on studiously avoiding the shit.
So Tony, do you think it's a safe way to kind of simulate the fear response by just pre-exhausting somebody with like conditioning and then put them in some like bad position scenarios or whatever? So
I'm
where
not
they're
going to
basically hyperventilating and then they got to start, doing their sparring.
I want to say no. I'm going to say no, and the reason being is they still know it's safe mentally, but more importantly, when you exhaust someone like that, they cannot learn anymore. Okay, their body cannot physically do the proper mechanics. Okay, so let's say you're by yourself, right? You're drilling on your own, and once you hit that level of exhaustion, you have to stop. Okay, I was just telling this karate guy this 2 days ago. You absolutely have to stop, because now your body is broken down and you can't do the moves properly. So all you're going to do is risk injury and risk introducing poor muscle memory. All right. So for that, I don't mean to be contrary with you, Nico, because you're really knowledgeable. But no, I don't believe in this pre-exhaustion thing. The only way, in my mind, is to make that person really feel true fear, but yet they still have to have enough ability physically, conditioning, to be able to handle that fear, as opposed to just flopping around because they can't do it. Now, Brian, if this guy you're mentioning that came to our gym is the same guy that I'm thinking, there was a time when he was sparring, rolling with maybe you, I don't remember who, but he just tapped out from nothing. Okay, he just was gassed. And I pulled him over to the side. I said, "You're not gassed. You know you're not gassed." And I gave him this long spiel about what would happen, and it's blah, blah, blah. And he was able to go. Of course, he couldn't tap anybody out, but he went a couple more minutes, and then we stopped it. It was just my way of triggering his brain to say, you can go on. I don't know, again, if that's the same guy or if you were even there when that incident happened, but so a good coach has to be like an armchair psychologist too, and just look at everybody as an individual and try to get him or her beyond their mental threshold. So I guess what I'm saying, Nico, is start mentally first, and just let them know. I remember one time with somebody, you guys don't know this person. This is when I was in Cleveland. Totally cool dude. I kind of felt bad about this afterwards, but I just snapped purposely. I got in his face, started screaming, blah, 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 kind of like, boot camp in the Marines. They do that for a reason, right? There's a reason they do all this. And that's kind of what I did on him. And boy, you should have seen the guy went pale. I thought he was going to have a heart attack. And then I let him in on it. I bought him lunch and, all of that. But man, his heart was going like this. He's like, man, damn it, I almost shit myself. Man, my God, don't ever do that to me again. But I said, see, that's what's going to happen in the street, pal. So yeah, you just have to play these games with everybody and find what works for each individual.
Tony, do you remember when you were filming a video for, this was a guy from the East Coast and he was doing it for his younger sister. It was like a self-defense thing, and it was and she was, you know, high school age, and you were just being yourself and dropping F-bombs and being and he's like, "Hey Tony, this is for, you know, 16-year-old girl." And he's like, and you said, "Fuck it." He's like, "You know how many times I've seen somebody in the street just go off and, you know, you end up grabbing Martin by the throat and, you know, basically cussing him out and throwing him on the mat." And Martin was just standing there and kind of was taken off guard, obviously, but it was that same mentality. It was like, wow, if this person's trying to learn to defend themselves in a life or death situation and they're not able to listen to a swear word on a video, I mean, what are we really dealing with here, right?
I totally remember that incident. Yep. And yeah, and I was screaming and, you know, going nuts on the video purposely, you know, because yeah, that's how it's going to be in the street. I mean, you're a young girl, let's say, you're, you know, probably the guy doesn't want to like necessarily beat you up. He's probably looking to, if not mug you and rape you, or just rape you. So yeah, if you can't deal with an F-bomb or whatever, you know, all the other curse words and shit, and somebody screaming and saying all these things that they're going to do to you, yeah, you're going to fold quickly. And but see, again, now getting off of him and his sister, because I don't want to sound like I'm trashing him. When you're never exposed to that kind of environment, once again, it becomes a shock. And this was a shock for this person in the safety of their own home or apartment, wherever they were when they were watching this. Yeah, you have to be prepared for this. Now, again, guys who are listening, I'm not saying, you know, turn your dojo into, you know, this crazy vulgar area, but you have to get as real as you possibly can. And that also includes training outdoors or training in automobiles and training in places that you normally wouldn't traditionally train. You know, picking somebody up, slamming them, or, you know, rubbing their head in, you know, sticking it in a snowbank, you know, is going to quickly change their attitude on their sport techniques. They're going to realize, oh shit, man, this, you know, in this example, flopping to my back is not going to help me in a street fight here if there's snow or ice or blah, 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 blah. And conversely, kickers or boxers may not be able to do what they have to do properly because of their lack of footing. They can't get the power generated and shit. So yeah, I remember that quite vividly. Poor Martin, but that was part of it.
Yeah, he was just standing there and you grabbed him by the throat, started cussing him out and threw him down on the ground. And so, and he's just like,
I go home now.
Yeah, pretty much. But you said it. You were like, you know how many times I've seen somebody just fold because they boom, and then that's when you just went off. And so that's true. If someone is, you know, teenage girls, the guy's going to be saying things much worse than that potentially to them as they try to sexually assault.
I just got an email the other day from somebody that we know, and he's like, yeah, these people talk shit about you. Like, one of the things they said is you figuratively kill people in your training. Well, once again, this is reality. If you can't handle this, your training is not going to ever, you're never going to be able to handle anybody. Forget about other MMA guys or grapplers. You're not going to be able to handle the bad guys. You know, training has to be realistic, or even if it's sport oriented, it's realistic in the world of that sport. Okay. So when you start worrying about certain things and not pushing yourself mentally and physically to the highest level, you're only fooling yourself. You're not insulting me, you know, and I don't take it personally, because these are people who've never met me, who've never trained with me. So they're just, you know, repeating bullshit. But you don't offend me. I don't get offended by that. I went through it. You went through it. So many people that never met me in a whole different walk of life has gone through the intensity of it. It's no big deal. But yeah, that is a classic example, Brian, what we're talking about. There's just some people that they'll fold. They don't have the mental stability, or I shouldn't say stability, mental ability to turn that switch and become the ugly person that, you know, we need. And military people and stuff like that, they know this concept. people get weeded out, washed out. Probably police and other, things like that. They don't have the mentality. Either they're over the top nuts, or they don't have that killer instinct.
Hey, Tony, remember when you did the same thing to Joe Cardinal? When you went off on him saying that he emailed your ex or something, and you you made it so believable. I was thinking, oh man, I think Tony's losing it.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah, right. I do that now and then. I just balls with it. And of course, the haters are going to say, what's his problem? Man, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, you're just trying to teach us a lesson, but
it
was so realistic, though. I didn't know you were messing around.
Well, you're right. See, and that's the thing. You have to almost become part actor, because you have to have that switch. So, like in a real life scenario, okay, let's talk about what happened to me with Joe in Cleveland. And poor Joe just missed this because, all right, let me give the backstory. So we got to go to Cleveland about in June. Yeah, I think it was. And yeah. So at one point, Joe was a few blocks away from the hotel that we were staying at, the arcade in Cleveland. I came back to the room because he was waiting to go to the top of the terminal tower, and the shit was just getting delayed. I didn't feel that good that whole trip. I was sick to my stomach and blah, blah, blah. So I'm back in the room, and I told him, just call the room or text me, and I'll let you in, because I used his room key. So after X amount of time, I was kind of getting stir crazy in the room. So I go downstairs to the lobby, and I figured, I'm just going to sit here for a while and just see the passerbys, and so on. So X amount of time goes by, nothing's happening. I'm just sitting on these steps. So I'm sitting on the bottom, inside. Well, the phone goes off. It's Joe. He's like, hey, where are you? I said, where are you? I'm in the lobby. He's like, I'm up in the room. I'm like, how the hell could you be in the room? Well, apparently, while I was coming down the elevator, he was going up the elevator. He had gone to the front lobby, which was on the other side of the arcade, and got an extra room key. So I said, well, come on down, because we were going to go get something to eat or something. So there was this lady who was a maintenance cleaner, cleaning the windows and of the doors and sweeping up. So this young guy comes in through the glass doors, and he comes up to me. I don't know, he's like 6 feet away, and he's mumbling. Well, that's a trigger for me, okay? Because that's one of the ways when I was a kid and younger that they would like to screw with you, because you'll lean in and say, what did you say? And that moment, you're vulnerable, right? Because you're off guard. You're thinking, what's up? How can I help you or whatever? Like one of the things they used to say all the time is, hey, what time is it? If they saw you had a watch on, what time is it? Now you're busy looking at your watch, boom, shit goes down. So you got to be alert. So the first thing I did was I jumped up off the steps. I kept my hands in a fighting position, but in front of me, not yet threatening, but I'm pointing at him, and I won't curse here on the video here, but basically I'm, what the F did you just say to me, man? What did you just say to me? What the F? And this dude started backing up. Okay. And he said, man, dude, I just wanted some, I just want some money, man. I don't have a job. I said, get away from me, man. This is it. This is your last chance, or trouble's going to start for you bad. So he takes off, and then the woman, the maintenance chick, then she comes in, which I'm glad she didn't come in before. She saw all this through the glass door, and she starts going off about that guy. Look at him. He's young. He's strong. There's plenty of jobs out there. He's just a bum. He's just, she just started, verbally going off on him, or on me to him, about him. So there was no altercation. The guy took off. So when Joe came down the elevator, because he missed us maybe 30 or 45 seconds, I'm talking to the maintenance chick about it. And the maintenance woman is like, you should have done this to him and that. Well, it all ended fine for me. And then as Joe and I walked out the other side of the arcade, because we had to go to where our car was parked in the garage, we saw the guy. So that's the asshole there, that, tried to get cute. But the point of it is, mentally, I'm there. I'm always, I would have destroyed this guy. There would have been no chance. It would have been over quickly. And it didn't have to. I didn't have to go there. I just had to physically show him, you can't punk me out. It's not going to happen. And that all come, and that was an instant thing. I didn't think about it. It's just that trigger is so ingrained in me. And sometimes I'll be honest with everybody listening. Sometimes you can overreact. It could just be an innocent question like, oh, I'm sorry. I asked you, are you Paul Newman? Because you look just like him. Okay. Well, you get my point. I'd rather overreact in a situation like that than underreact and become a statistic. It's not going to happen. But as I said, they'll use subterfuge, they'll use misdirection, they'll use little street cons to distract you, even if it's momentarily, to do their shit to you. And they may not be alone. There may be that guy, may be the decoy. There may be somebody else coming up on you. That was not the case with me in this instance, but it all boils down to your mental training, man. You just have to be alert. And there was, Joe will tell you this when he comes back, there were areas of Cleveland he wanted to take. This guy took more pictures than a National Geographic photographer. And there were areas of the town where I'm like, I'm parking this car. I'm not going to let you walk. I'm standing right next to you because these neighborhoods are deadly. They're not safe. And he'll tell you that. I mean, I was right there bodyguarding him the whole time because I know that town. I know what can go down. So yeah, you just psychologically you have to be prepared for this. It's you have to have that switch. And with me, I don't have like a gray area. I'm like either okay, cool, calm and collected, or I'm all in. I'm not going to get like
Commit.
Yeah,
Like committing.
Those people who are half-ass committed, that's when the trouble starts. So either, let's just say today, you just know, because of whatever the circumstance is, you cannot commit. Okay, maybe you have to get to court. Otherwise, you're going to be arrested and spend 20 years in jail because you missed your court date, or you're on your way, your loved one is dying in the hospital, you got to get there, whatever the case may be. You're dressed up for a wedding, you can't get into a fight. You should know this going in. I'm not committed. Unless my life is absolutely, truly in danger, I'm not going to commit to this. I'm going to try another avenue. But there's no half-assed about it with me. Either I'm going to blow you off and say, forget about it safely, or I'm all in. And, that's how you have to be. And you can't think about anything while this is going on. I've said this a million times. You can't fight yourself and your opponents or opponent. You got to be all focused on them or him. If it's one-on-one, just say him. Because if you're starting to worry about, boy, if I hit this guy, I'm going to go to jail. Well, you're already in trouble, man. You're already digging yourself your own grave. You just can't care about that shit. You got to have all of that stuff prearranged beforehand. Okay? And you can. And somebody asked me, how can you prepare for that? Simple. If you're worried about going to jail, well, then you should have about $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000, whatever it is, saved up, just in case something like that happens. If you're worried about getting killed, what's going to happen to your wife or your kids, you should already have your $250,000 life insurance policy going. Okay? So if something does happen, you know that they're taken care of. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about with reality-based fighting. Okay? It's not just what do you learn in the dojo. You got to have your whole life prepared for this stuff. I knew a guy once, friend of Kevin's. Brian, you probably met the guy. He passed away before Kevin did. He used to like to, I'll be honest with you, he used to like to drink and drive. He was Kevin's age. And one day he got popped for a DUI. And he didn't sweat it. He really didn't. He's like, nope, I learned my lesson. He says, I already had money put aside for this. Okay, I'm covered. It's not going to financially be a burden on me. I don't agree with the drinking and driving part, but in theory, he's doing what I always advocated doing. If you have loved ones, make sure that you have contingency plans for their care. And, know full well that if you do get into it with somebody, you got your bases covered. I always say, wherever you live, if you move to a new area, a new town even, talk to the police. Go to the police, schedule an appointment and say, hey, what are the laws here on, self-defense? What am I allowed to do and what am I not allowed to do? Because certain towns or certain states, the laws vary. So know what you're dealing with. Don't get caught by surprise. And just go from there. Definitely street fighting is the ultimate oh shit moment, right? Because it's as serious as it gets. Sorry for rambling.
Tony, has that ever happened to you personally when somebody like comes up to you whispering just as a decoy to
Yeah,
commit
I
some kind
just
of
said
crime on you?
it happened to me in Cleveland so many times. Not all the time. Sometimes it was either a complete surprise attack, and you just all of a sudden you're like ambushed basically, and that happened out here a few times in Chicago. But a lot of times also it was like precipitated, the words or the looks. Oh, that's another thing. And I'll get to the whispering part, but I've always heard guys say, like, with their woman, their wife or their girlfriend, and they're out, let's say, in a bar and some guy's looking at her and all this. He's like, well, as long as he doesn't put his hands on her, all's good. No bullshit. I'm going to tell you guys right now, the fight doesn't start when he puts his hands on your girlfriend or your wife. It starts long before that. It starts with the looks. Okay. Believe me, I've been through this. Okay. With guns and all this shit, it all ends up knives. It starts long before that. You've got to snuff that right away. If you see somebody looking hard, you've got to learn to diffuse that. And I don't mean go up there and just, beat the guy to a pulp. You have to learn some diplomacy, okay? Some verbal etiquette. But anyway, getting back to the whisper thing, sure. One time when I got jumped with 3 kids with baseball bats, I was a kid coming off of school, coming home from school, but we took public transportation. So I get off the bus and I'm walking like, I showed Joe exactly where it happened. I'm walking like there's no care in the world. I saw the kids ahead of me. They were sitting on the curb of the street. I'm on the sidewalk and they had baseball bats. And the one kid, hey, what time is it? It was on, that was his come on line. And, 3 guys with ball bats, they're my age, maybe a little older. It's not good. I was in condition. I was able to defend myself and protect myself. But boy, that shit sure hurt. When it was all over, I was limping on the way home. It did not hurt during the attack. It hurt afterwards, once the adrenaline, you go into shock kind of sort of. And I've had this happen in other realms too with the, hey, come here, man, that kind of shit. And you just ignore that, okay? You don't need to even, this guy in Cleveland a couple months ago, he was physically in front of me and I was sitting down. Whoa, that's not good, okay? I'm on a step. There's nothing guarding me from him. So I jumped up really aggressive. And that's all I had to do. You don't always have to do that. Sometimes you can ignore them, but don't be, I hate to say this word, but don't be a pussy about it. You've got to have the backup. You got to know that you can take this guy, or at least think you can, and be firm with him. You don't have to be, Clint Eastwood here. You just have to let them know that this is going to be a big mistake for you. I had one time when I was shooting pool. I think we talked about this once before. I was whooping this guy pretty good. We're playing for $1 a game. And I'm like 20, 21. This is in Cleveland. And he was like maybe 40. But he had a cowboy hat and all that shit. He just did not look like he belonged to Cleveland. But at one point, after like maybe the 4th game, I don't remember, the 8-ball, I had a straight in shot. You couldn't miss this. He's standing by the pocket where I'm going to make the 8-ball. He had a blazer, like a Western blazer. He just pulls it back a little bit and I see the pistol. So I'm thinking, okay, well, 2 things came through my head. I said, well, I can't reach him from where I'm at right now. Even with a cue stick, I can't reach this guy. He's too far away. And I said, well, he's lost about $4. This game is going to make it $5. There's a bunch of people in the front of the bar. Because we were in like a, not a back room, but we were like behind the bar area. And I'm like, he's not going to kill me or shoot me for $5. And this isn't going to happen. That was my thought process. Right or wrong, it was my thought process. So I smiled. I said, 8-ball straight in, boom, and I made it, And of for the record, he ponied up the dollar and that was it. He finished his drink and left. I wouldn't let him punk me out, but I didn't get into his shit. Hey, what the fuck you doing or anything like that. No, I just cool, calmly made the 8 ball and didn't get punked out. So every scenario is slightly different, but it all boils down to you. And you may have handled it differently than me because you're like, the way you talk to people is going to be different than me. But you got to have the goods to back it up. And in that case, in that instance, if he would have just pulled the gun and shot me, there's nothing I could do. Okay. We were playing on an 8-foot pool table. So not a 7-foot bar table, even though the 7-foot wouldn't have mattered. I'm still a couple of feet behind the end, and he's a couple of feet from the other end. So we're talking about 10, 12 feet in an open room. What chance would I have had? If this isn't a martial art movie, duck underneath the pool table, maybe? Okay. But all he would have to do is drop down and pull the trigger. Who knows? But it worked out fine, thank goodness. But other times for me, it hasn't worked out. Just don't know.
I think you hit a nail on the head. It's not, every situation's different, and you're gonna have to essentially make those decisions and know to de-escalate. De-escalate may just mean walking away, or it could mean just telling a joke. It could be, there's a lot of ways to not escalate a situation, especially if it's not going to be in your favor. But sometimes it takes escalation, like I said, like the guy in the hotel in Cleveland.
Well, yeah, because
proactive, and then he just de-escalated the situation because you were preparing for something.
Right. Well, again, you're 100% right, and I was prepared. Obviously, I would have no problem, whooping his ass. That would have been easy. But the thing here is, you don't know, and you do have to have some preparation. And granted, I'm getting older. I'm not 20 years old anymore, right? I get it. But what am I supposed to do? Roll over and just, that's it? No, I still try to stay fit. I still try to stay active, and I think about this stuff all the time, especially now because I have time to think. I'm kind of isolated, and isolation can bring on thought processes, all right? Where you realize you're on your own. Who knows what's going to happen here? You've got to be able to deal with it. So these are great times for me as I get older to refresh the scenarios that happened in the past and create my own new scenarios, like what ifs, and use them logically. But this all ties into this stuff with the main thing, the Haku. I have no problem going to that level of, doing whatever it takes to, and you guys know, Brian, some of the shit I went through here in Chicago, and I had to escalate it. I don't have a problem with that. If it's going to be him or me, I'd rather it be him going down than me. And that's the kind of technique, the attitude that you have to have. And then you have to have the techniques to allow you to pull that off. And when I really get deep into the subject of self-defense with people, sometimes you can't, quote unquote, win in a traditional sense where you incapacitate your opponent. Sometimes it's just planning an escape. If you got multiple assailants, or there's weapons that you're dealing with and you're unarmed completely, your survival is your main instinct right now. You've got to figure out, how can I get out of this scenario? And that can be a fascinating thing. It's a deep subject, and it's one that's kind of like a vocabulary. It's so gigantic that you can never cover it in a dojo. You could never, probably, like us, if I asked either one of you guys right now, tell me every word in English that you know, you have no idea. You don't know how many words you know, and none of us have the time to sit there and listen to all of it. And that's what this is like. It's so vast. There's no way that you could possibly know every scenario, but you have to have that quote unquote vocabulary of fighting ability and mentality that you'll be able to use your vocabulary, I guess, to deal with the situation. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, it's a skill. I mean, like I'm a decent cook and, I've been working on it for a few years just by cooking at home and reading recipes and watching the Food Network. And I'll always have that. I could not step in a kitchen for years and I could still go back and do it. I mean, Nico, if you never nailed two boards together for several years, you could get back and still lay down some construction probably, once it's in there, that's how you can go back to the place, is once you've been there for long enough,
Where's my kimchi? I've been waiting for kimchi. I bought 2 jars of this junk because you can't find that shit anywhere. There's a Myers around here. I bought 2 of them. I ate one of them. It wasn't that good, but I got
I'll bring you some next time. I'll be up. We'll be up there next few weeks. We'll connect.
Yeah,
so
we got to film some more stuff for the membership site and everything else, and we have some other stuff we need to talk about offline. The little projects, but I love kimchi, and very low calories. It's great.
It's a superfood. Probiotics, nutrition. Yeah, it's great. Well, I mean, on that note, we should probably always, especially as we probably wrap up in a little bit, talk about the membership options with the site and Tri-C and anything you want to share related to that. So people are aware.
Yeah, the membership is what, $10 a month. Every month you'll get a video, and it's not like the beginning of the month. It's 30 days or whatever it is, 30 or 31 from the day you join. So if you join on, let's say, the 15th, your next video would be, roughly the 15th or the 14th, however the algorithm is. And these are not videos that are already like for sale. These are filmed here or as for now, and who knows later down the line. So that's a very economical way to pick up stuff, but the Tri-C is the main thing. And I know a lot of people just, $3,000, but you can't beat it. You just can't. I thought once about how much it cost me just in travel in today's dollars to learn from Stanley Robon, just in transportation, just taking public transportation and gasoline for my car and everything else. And it was in the thousands, because I was there so much, and it was like a long haul. But the Tri-C is personalized, whereas the membership, it's just me filming for the general public. The Tri-C is interactive. You learn what I think you need, and we discuss your needs. And I watch videos of you that you film and upload, and you watch videos of me critiquing it. And telling you, go here, do this, do that, or let's move on to lesson 2. And you get, at the end, whenever that is, you get totally certified. And it also involves coming to Chicago if you want to. You don't have to, but you get to stay with me. So you don't have to pay for a hotel room. That's free. And, I've had people come, like I said, from all over the world. Sometimes they're here for 7 days or longer. You come to Chicago or anywhere for 7 to 10 days, think what your hotel bill would be. It would be astronomical out here. It'd be half the cost of the course. So there's no time limit on the course. It's not like you got to hurry up and do it. But it's personalized. And because it's personalized, I cannot allow 1,000 people to join. Boy, I wish I could. I'd be rich. But it has to be a smaller limit, otherwise I wouldn't have enough time to watch your video, do my video, edit it, what do you call it? When you transfer it to a smaller file size, upload it, all of that takes time. And like I mentioned, today's whole podcast is basically based on the question that Dustin and his son asked. That's a father and son there, okay, that are doing it. I have another couple that are interested in perhaps joining the Tri-C program. It's a husband and wife working out together. There's no excuses. And I've had a lot of people who are just on their own. It's just me, Tony. What can I do? Plenty. Well, so there's always options there. And
to give people some context, I mean, I started training with you in the 90s, and at that time, this is pre Lost Art of Hooking, you know, you had to basically come to the tool and die shop to train. That was it. Or, you know, the technological limitations of filming something generally on a VHS, mailing it, watching it, maybe then, you know, corresponding that way via telephone or sending back another video, assessing with critiques. That's, you know, think about how streamlined we are with technology now, and how reachable or responsive you are now, just given those, you know, improvements than it existed even just a few years ago. So it can definitely be, I would say, anyone who's involved or interested in that can definitely be heavily utilized and make it what you want it to be as well.
Well, we had Paul Dodson on a few weeks ago, and he was the very first Tri-C member, and he's still here 15 years later. And yeah, he had it, and he's in England. And he had to literally he would make a DVD, send it to me in the mail, which took 2 weeks. I'd have to watch it, review it, film something, burn it to a DVD and mail it to him, which took 2 weeks. Right there was just a month right in that, you know, and I couldn't always get to it the very first day he mailed it to me. So sometimes it took a while. And then now, you know, then through the years, it like you say, it got streamlined like it is now. And that doesn't mean the minute you send me the video, I'm going to be able to watch it. You know, I'll get to it in a day or so, a couple of days, sometimes 3 or 4, depending if the slots. But you need to practice these techniques. If I show you something, I don't expect you to film it and send it back to me the same day. That's not practice. You have to get an X amount of reps in, but not so many that I know that you're doing it wrong. Send it to me and I'll say, yep, okay, you're on the right path. Do this change or do that change. Now go back and practice that. And let's throw this in now. And you also get all of my videos, right? Which there's tons. Sometimes I'll reference that. I'll say, look at the Lost Art of Hooking or the Snap No Tap or, you know, the wrist lock seminar or the Lucky 13, whatever, and use that. And then I add things to it. I'll say, but, you know, because, you know, you can't cover everything when you film these Lost Art of Hookings and Snap No Taps. You can't. So if I see you and your training partner or just you yourself doing something incorrectly, I'll say, well, this is what you have to do. Now, I may not have shown this on the Snap No Tap because, you know, nobody was doing it quite like you are. Let's make these adjustments. So it really works. It works well. Now, I'm not saying I'm the first guy to ever do that, but it's really popular with like university, what is that, Phoenix University or whatever, and all these other colleges that are doing the online thing. Berkeley School of Music did it many years ago, and I heard, I think they're doing it again. Yeah, so the online thing is really very convenient, and you can film shit at any time. You don't have to like call me up and say, Tony, I need to do this live. What's your schedule? No, you film it, you email it to, you upload it to, we use Dropbox. Let me know, send me an email, send me the link. I'll download it, I'll watch it, and then I make the recommendations and the corrections. I don't know. It can't be any simpler than that. And I hark back to when I was a kid. If this option existed then, I would have jumped on it in a heartbeat, because many times it was impractical for me to go to the lesson, but I did anyway, or I couldn't make it. But the beautiful thing is, like I said, you can come to Chi-Town, stay with me. You don't even have to, like I said, pay for a room. You just get your airline ticket out here. I'll pick you up at the airport. You don't even need a car. There's no way to be talked out of this. Okay. I mean, I just don't know what else to do. And I've had businessmen tell me that I should charge 10 grand for this, you know, minimum, because it's, you know, we know somebody, or I knew somebody of somebody who many, many years ago was doing that. You train with him for 1 month. It was $10,000. You had to pay for your hotel room 1 month, and you got a belt rank in their martial arts style. And it was a blue belt rank. $10,000 for 1 month training. And that's back in the 90s, my friend. Imagine what that would be in today's dollars. That's just not, I mean, come on, and people did it. So I don't know why people don't jump. You know, you got to jump on this while you can, before it's, you know, a few years ago, I shut it down for like a year. The Tri-C program, I didn't take anybody new. And then I started, and then there was a few people that want, oh, I don't have the money. Can I pay you in dribbles? And I foolishly said, okay. Well, that never works out for me. They never end up paying me. So, just if you want to make the commitment, I'm here. Sign up for the Tri-C program. You don't even need to email me first. Just, I still have some openings. Sign up, and then you'll get a link to all my DVD, my downloads, and we start. And even if you can't come to Chicago, or you can't come for 8 months or next year, start now anyway. This is great, because now you'll have some fundamentals, and we can work with each other. So I'm going to keep on plugging that, because that's going to be, the way to go in the future. And you have, Brian, yeah, you moved all the way out here. Other people have too. Nico was making a long trek before the COVID thing, but that's it. And I'm still waiting on my kimchi. You can mail it to me. We're talking about doing this distance learning. Let's do distance kimchi.
Well, that's some pretty noxious stuff. If it breaks open, they might, the feds, BATF may come, find me thinking I was shipping some type of substance, that way.
Explosives.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But hey, that's good for the gut. Okay, all that stuff. So doesn't
Yeah,
matter what it sounds like.
I really I remember when I first had it. Actually, it was funny. It was at a Japanese restaurant, but it was owned by Koreans, and they would bring the kimchi with the rice and all of that. And then one time, the owner, because I used to go regularly, and he brought me some special kimchi out. So I really want you to try this, but be careful. Yeah, I couldn't handle that. And
Spicy, yeah.
oh, now I might have been able to, because I'm a little bit better with that. But he came out, I went to grab the water, and he screamed at me, "No!" I guess the water spreads it around. So he brought me a big bowl of, well, not a big bowl, but a bowl of rice. He's like, "Eat this rice." Manja on the rice to try to kill it. But yeah, I would like to try that now. I'm still not a record holder type of guy. I can't do super, super hot. The closest there's a guy over here he's from India. He makes curry, and his curry is really, really hot now for me. And it was too much. It was really like upsetting me.
Mhm.
So I haven't been back to his place since before I went to Cleveland for the weekend. So if I do go back, or when I go back, I'll tell him, yeah, give me the milder. You got to tone it down for me. But yeah, I want to try your kimchi, buddy. I love it.
All right, we'll get that going. I guess any final thoughts? We should probably get it rolling here, wrapping it up.
No, just thanks everybody for watching. If you can, hit the like and subscribe button. We are not monetized on YouTube. So I don't get any pennies or nickels or dimes from YouTube. This is all of us just voluntarily do this, trying to help whoever we can, and know that no matter what, even if I never hear from any of you guys, I appreciate the fact that you do come and watch it when you do, and all the previous support through the 25, 30 years, whatever it's been online, training, buying videos or whatever. Thanks very much. And yeah, I'll hopefully see you next week. Joe won't be back until the following Monday, so hopefully we can see you again next week, Brian.
Yeah, I think it'll just be us, so to speak, without Joe. He's out doing his thing. So Nico, good seeing you too.
Good seeing you.
Thanks for the questions, guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Ciao.